There is a booth inside a Denny's restaurant in East San Jose, California, that has a little metal plaque on it. And on that plaque it says the booth that launched a trillion-dollar company. That booth is where Jensen Huang sat in 1993 with two friends and started Nvidia. Jensen Huang was a dishwasher at that exact Denny's when he was 15 years old. He washed dishes and cleaned tables and carried plates, and now the table where he did all that has a plaque on it, because the company he started there is worth more than $4 trillion. More than Apple, more than Microsoft, more than Google. Nvidia is the most valuable company on Earth right now, and almost nobody knows the name of the man who built it. His name is Jensen Huang, and this is how he did it. Jensen Huang was born in Taiwan in 1963, and when he was 5, his family moved to Thailand. Then, when he was 9 years old, his parents sent him and his brother alone on a plane from Thailand to the United States. They landed in Tacoma, Washington. Their uncle was supposed to take care of them and find them a good school. The uncle found a school called Oneida Baptist Institute in Kentucky and told Jensen it was a great place. It was not a great place. Jensen was 9 years old and the youngest kid there, and his job every single morning was to clean the toilets for 100 teenage boys. He told Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast that his roommate was a 17-year-old kid wrapped in tape from a recent knife fight. That was Jensen Huang's first home in America, a 9-year-old cleaning toilets in Kentucky. But Jensen kept going. He got through it, and his parents moved to Oregon, and he went to high school outside of Portland, and he got really good at ping pong, and when he was 15, he came in 3rd place at the U.S. Open Junior Doubles Table Tennis Tournament, and he got a job at Denny's washing dishes. He was so serious about washing dishes that he told Stanford Graduate School of Business in a talk in 2024 that he planned his work and was organized and washed the living daylights out of those dishes and never left his station empty-handed. He graduated high school at 16 and went to Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon, to study electrical engineering, and in his electrical engineering lab, he met a girl named Lori Mills, who was his lab partner, and he married her. Then he got a job at AMD, which stands for Advanced Micro Devices, which is the chip company based in Santa Clara, California, that makes processors that go inside computers and competes with Intel. Jensen worked at AMD while taking night classes at Stanford University in Palo Alto, California, to get his master's degree in electrical engineering. And after Stanford, he went to work at a company called Lucy Logic, which made chips for storage systems. He was doing well. He had a real job and a degree from Stanford and a paycheck. But he had an idea. The year is 1992, and Jensen keeps meeting two guys named Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem at Denny's. Malachowski and Preem both worked at Sun Microsystems, which was the famous tech company in Silicon Valley that made the computer systems used by Wall Street banks and by NASA. The three of them kept getting coffee at that Denny's in East San Jose and talking about the same thing over and over. Video games, specifically the graphics inside video games. At that time, the most popular video games were things like Street Fighter II in the arcades, and Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis, and Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. The graphics were blocky and flat, and Jensen thought that was going to change very fast. He thought computers were going to need a whole new kind of chip just to draw better pictures on screens. Not a regular computer chip, a chip that could do millions of tiny math problems all at the same time to make pictures look real. He thought if they could build that chip, they would make a lot of money. So one morning in that Denny's booth, Jensen Huang, Chris Malachowski, and Curtis Preem decided to do it. They each put $200 in cash in a pile, $600 total. Jensen went and found a lawyer named James Gaither at a firm called Cooley Godward and paid him that $600 to make the company real. On April 5, 1993, Jensen Huang personally signed the papers that made Nvidia a real company. They picked the name Nvidia partly from the Latin word invidia, which means envy, because they wanted people to envy their chips, and partly from NV, which stood for the first chip they were going to build. They set up their first office in the home of Curtis Preem and started working. No salaries, no money coming in, just 3 guys, and a big idea. But here is the thing that almost killed Nvidia right at the beginning. Jensen made a big bet, and it was the wrong bet. The first chip Nvidia built was called the NV1, and it used a way of drawing graphics called quadrilaterals, which means they drew pictures using 4-sided shapes. Almost every other company in the world was drawing graphics using triangles. Jensen thought quadrilaterals were better. He was wrong. Microsoft, which makes Windows and at that time was the most powerful software company in the world run by Bill Gates, announced that their new graphics software called Direct 3D would only work with triangles. Not quadrilaterals, triangles only. Nvidia had built the wrong chip. Sega, the company that made the Sega Saturn game console, had paid Nvidia to help build chips using quadrilaterals for the Saturn. Then, Sega dropped them. The Sega Saturn failed in the market anyway, losing badly to the Sony PlayStation. Nvidia was out of money and out of partners and almost dead. Jensen Huang sat in his office in Sunnyvale, California, and had to go back to their investor, a man named Don Valentine who ran a famous venture capital firm in Menlo Park called Sequoia Capital, and ask for more money. Sequoia Capital is the firm that also funded Apple and Google and YouTube and Instagram. Don Valentine gave Jensen more money, but made clear it was the last chance. Jensen took the money and made a decision that saved the company. He threw away the NV1 design. He started over. He built a new chip using triangles like Microsoft wanted, and he had to do it faster than any chip company had ever built a chip before. They called the new chip the RIVA 128. The RIVA 128 came out in 1997, and it was fast, and it was cheap, and it worked with Windows, and PC gamers loved it. Nvidia sold 1 million of them in 4 months. For the first time, Nvidia was making real money. But Jensen was already working on the next thing. In 1999, Nvidia released a chip called the GeForce 256. Nvidia called it a GPU, which stands for Graphics Processing Unit. They were the first company to ever use that word for a chip. The GeForce 256 went inside Windows PCs, and it made video games look incredible. Games like Quake 3 Arena and Unreal Tournament were running on the GeForce 256, and the graphics looked better than anything people had seen on a home computer. PC gamers went crazy for it. Nvidia's stock went public on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange in 1999, and the company was worth real money now. But then something very bad happened. In 2001, a company called 3DFX, which was Nvidia's biggest competitor in the graphics chip market, went bankrupt, and Nvidia bought them. Then the dot-com bubble, which was the huge crash of all the internet companies, hit Silicon Valley hard. And then, Nvidia made another near-fatal mistake. They built a chip called the NV30, which was supposed to be amazing. And Jensen himself later said in public that the NV30 was an architectural disaster and a tragedy. The software team and the hardware team barely talked to each other while building it. ATI Technologies, which was a Canadian chip company that competed with Nvidia, released their Radeon 9700 card, and it was better than Nvidia's NV30 in almost every way. Gamers on internet forums like AnandTech and Tom's Hardware wrote that Nvidia had lost. Nvidia's stock price fell 87% in 2002. Not 8%, 87%. That is almost the whole thing gone. Most companies would have closed. Jensen Huang did not close. He fixed it. He kept the company together and built a new chip called the GeForce FX, and then the GeForce 6 series, which was fast and good, and Nvidia climbed back up. And then in 2006, Jensen did the thing that changed everything. Not just for Nvidia, for the entire world. Jensen looked at the GPU chip they had built for video games, and he thought about something. A GPU has thousands of tiny little processors all working at the exact same time. For video games, that was perfect, because drawing a picture on a screen means doing millions of tiny math problems all at once, and the GPU could do them all simultaneously. But Jensen thought, wait, what else needs to do millions of tiny math problems all at once? Science, weather forecasting, drug research, physics simulations, and something called machine learning, which a small number of researchers at places like the University of Toronto were working on, where you trained a computer to recognize patterns by feeding it huge amounts of data. Jensen thought, if we let scientists program our GPU chips, then they could use our chips for all of that. So in 2006, Nvidia released something called CUDA. CUDA stands for Compute Unified Device Architecture. It was software that let scientists and programmers use Nvidia GPU chips to do math for anything they wanted, not just video games. Jensen started going to universities. Nvidia wrote textbooks about CUDA and gave them away. Nvidia paid for research labs to use their chips. Nvidia sent engineers to MIT and Stanford and Carnegie Mellon University and UC Berkeley to teach students how to use CUDA. Almost nobody in the business world noticed. Wall Street did not care. Tech reporters did not write about it. It looked like Jensen was wasting money teaching professors things that had nothing to do with video games, but Jensen kept going. Then in 2012, something happened at a contest called the ImageNet Large-Scale Visual Recognition Challenge, which is a competition where researchers build computer programs that try to identify objects in photos. A team from the University of Toronto, led by a professor named Geoffrey Hinton and two of his students named Alex Krzyzewski and Ilya Sutskever, built a program called AlexNet that used two NVIDIA GeForce GTX 580 GPUs to train itself on millions of images. AlexNet won the contest by a massive gap. It was so much better than everything else that the scientists in the room could not believe the numbers. And the reason AlexNet was so good was CUDA. It used NVIDIA's GPU chips to train itself on data faster than anything before it. Ilya Sutskever later went on to be one of the founders of OpenAI and helped build ChatGPT. Geoffrey Hinton later won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2024. And the two GTX 580 GPUs that AlexNet ran on were NVIDIA chips. Every serious AI researcher in the world saw what happened at that ImageNet contest, and they all went out and bought NVIDIA GPUs. All of them. Google's AI team started using NVIDIA GPUs. Facebook's AI team started using NVIDIA GPUs. A researcher named Andrew Ng, who ran Google Brain, which was Google's AI lab, started using NVIDIA GPUs. DeepMind in London, which Google bought in 2014, started using NVIDIA GPUs. And because they were all using CUDA to program those GPUs, and CUDA only worked on NVIDIA chips, none of them could switch to a different chip without throwing away years of work. Jensen had built a trap that everyone walked into because they wanted to. CUDA was the trap, and it was a beautiful trap. By 2016, NVIDIA was building a new chip called the Tesla P100 specifically for AI research, not for video games, for AI. The P100 went into data centers at Google and Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure and Meta. NVIDIA's stock started going up. Then in 2017, NVIDIA released the Tesla V100, which was even more powerful for AI, and the stock went up more. Then in 2020, NVIDIA released the A100 chip, and OpenAI used 25,000 of them to train GPT-4. 25,000 chips all working together. If you use just one A100 chip to train GPT-4, it would take 35,000 years. With 25,000 chips, it took about 90 days. Jensen was now standing on the stage at NVIDIA's annual GTC conference in San Jose, California, every year in a black leather jacket, talking to tens of thousands of engineers and developers from every company on Earth. The GTC conference is where Jensen announces new chips and new software, and every word he says moves the stock market. In 2023, when the demand for NVIDIA chips exploded after ChatGPT became the fastest-growing consumer app in history, Jensen walked onto the stage at GTC, and the crowd cheered like he was a rock star. Forbes put him on the cover of their magazine. Time magazine put him on the cover. The New York Times wrote long profiles about him. Jensen Huang, the kid who cleaned toilets in Kentucky and washed dishes at Denny's in San Jose, was now the most powerful person in Silicon Valley. Then in 2023, NVIDIA released the H100 chip, which was even faster than the A100, and every AI company on Earth needed them immediately. OpenAI needed H100s, Google needed H100s, Microsoft needed H100s, Meta needed H100s, Elon Musk's company xAI needed H100s. There were not enough H100s. Companies were on waiting lists that were months long. Elon Musk posted on X that trying to get NVIDIA GPUs was like trying to get drugs, and they were the new drug. Microsoft was spending billions of dollars buying H100s for their data centers in Virginia and Iowa and Washington State. Amazon was buying them for Oz data centers all over the world. Google was buying them to train Gemini. Meta was buying them to build Llama. In June 2024, NVIDIA passed Apple and Microsoft to briefly become the most valuable company in the entire world. The company that three guys started in a Denny's booth with $600. The company that almost died twice. The company whose stock dropped 87% in 2002. That company was worth more than $3 trillion. Then, in January 2025, a Chinese AI company called DeepSeek released a model that scared the whole market because they did it with far fewer NVIDIA chips than anyone expected, and NVIDIA's stock dropped almost 17% in one day. That was the biggest single-day market value loss for any company in the history of the U.S. stock market. NVIDIA lost about $600 billion in value in one day. Jensen went on TV and gave interviews and told reporters that DeepSeek was actually good for Nvidia because more efficient AI means more people doing more AI, which means more chips needed. And he was right again. Within weeks, the stock came back. By 2025, Nvidia released a new chip called the Blackwell B200, which has 208 billion transistors on it. 208 billion tiny switches on one piece of silicon smaller than your hand. Google ordered Blackwells. Microsoft ordered Blackwells. Amazon ordered Blackwells. Every hospital and bank and car company and government that wanted to build AI ordered Blackwells. In 2026, Jensen Huang was named the #1 most powerful person in business by Fortune magazine. His net worth passed $200 billion. The Denny's in East San Jose put that plaque on his old booth. And Jensen Huang still wears his black leather jacket on stage at every GTC conference like he is the coolest person in the room. Because he is. He is the kid who cleaned toilets in Kentucky and washed dishes in San Jose and almost went bankrupt twice and built the company that makes the chips inside every single AI system that exists on Earth right now. ChatGPT runs on Nvidia chips. Gemini runs on Nvidia chips. Claude runs on Nvidia chips. Grok runs on Nvidia chips. Every self-driving car system Tesla and Waymo are testing runs on Nvidia chips. The robots Boston Dynamics is building run on Nvidia chips. The weather forecasting models at the National Weather Service run on Nvidia chips. The drug discovery programs at Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson run on Nvidia chips. The nuclear fusion research at the National Ignition Facility in California runs on Nvidia chips, all of it. Every piece of it traces back to that booth in Denny's where Jensen Huang sat down with $600 and a big idea and started something that changed the world. He did not go to Harvard. He did not come from money. He was not born in Silicon Valley. He was a kid from Taiwan who cleaned toilets in Kentucky and washed dishes in San Jose and just never stopped. That is how Jensen Huang built Nvidia.